When you say nation, you talk about land. Our land is Africa. That's undeniable. This land is not our land.
That what Frantz Fanon's theory, psychological theory, is that we're in a post-colonial psychology. And what he calls that is an auto-destructional stage, which is the oppressor will oppress for so long that the oppressed no longer have to be physically oppressed. They do it to themselves automatically.
I'm black. Do you hear me, man? Do you understand? I am black. I'm a nigga. Do you understand me? I was born black, I live black, and I'm gonna die probably because I'm black. Because some cracker that knows I'm black better than you, nigga, is probably gonna put a bullet in the back of my head.
Hey man, it's like this, man. It's like, you know, it's like it's revolution time, man. There's no questions asked. Revolution is here. You know what I'm saying? We the youth, we the young. It's time for us to break loose, you know? We don't have no freedom, no rights, man. We slaves right now. Everybody's still a slave. That's what they told us today. In other words, you still a slave. No matter how much money you got, you still ain't shit. So, you know, it's on, just like that. Just like
are really ready and willing to pay the price that is necessary for freedom. Our people will always be walking around here second-class citizens, or what you call 20th century slaves.
What price are you talking about, sir?
The price of freedom is death.
What's the figure?
I mean, what are you in this for? You want power, you want revenge, you know? What is it?
It's simple, Willie. I just want to be free.
Hey, peace. Uhuru to the family. Thanks for tapping into another episode of We Charge Colonialism. We are We Charge Colonialism Media, and most of our focus have been over the last year or so is countering the colonial narrative about African people and uplifting the African experience around the world. So whether you're on the continent or in the diaspora, we understand the connection, and we understand that we have a common enemy and common destiny, as Garvey used to speak about, right? So we make sure that we expose the contradictions that exist around the world and uplift things that we need to do as a people to liberate ourselves. So one of the things that we're going to begin to do is to highlight these corporate criminals. And I kind of was inspired to do this from the series that I'm doing on Dr. Amoson Wilson's book, Black on Black Crime. And understanding that one of the narratives that the colonizers like to put out there is this criminal element that exists within the Black community, and sort of try to paint or criminalize, I should say, criminalize the Black community through images and through media. So, you know, I thought it was important to counter that because most of the criminals of the world don't look like us. And most of the crimes that are committed that causes an unlimited amount of damage, you know, a huge amount of damage to the Black community is done by these corporations. And so I just want to begin to highlight some of these criminal activities through a series. And today, one of the corporations that I'm going to cover is a corporation that is based in Dubai, based in the United Arab Emirates, but does business in Sudan. And we know what's happening in Sudan. Well, hopefully we know what's taking place in Sudan, but I'm going to continue to uplift that as well. So we'll talk about that today in this podcast. But before we get into all of that, I want to appreciate you all for tapping in. But make sure you like and share so we can get some more people on here. I counter a lot of people who talk about, no one's talking about what's taking place in Sudan and Congo, in the Sudan and Congo. And it drives me crazy because I'm like, that's all we're talking about right here when we charge colonialism. So either you're not searching or looking, or you're just selling wolf tickets. Some people like to talk and really show their ignorance. But if you're really doing the research and you want to find these conversations, these conversations are being had. As a matter of fact, I put in the corporation that I'm going to be discussing today on YouTube, and this podcast came up. So, you know, if you're doing the search, you'll be able to find things. So with that being said, make sure you like and share. And if this is your first time being here, subscribe to the channel, so you can continue to be tapped into these conversations. So before I get started, I want to do a little promo. Thanksgiving is having their 9th annual event, Thanksgiving event. So I just want to share that because these are people that I organize with, that I've been, building with since I've been in New York. I've been in New York for almost 2 decades. Let me share this. And some of the great people that I met in New York was people who were part of the Thanksgiving Collective. And peace to the family. Sugar always tapped in, and Kruma, my yacht. Appreciate y'all tapping in. My brother, what's going on? My brother, stay balanced. Let me get this. All right. So really quick, before we get into things, I just want to, make this plug. Thanksgiving Collective presents the 9th annual Thanksgiving. And of course, as you can tell, like we had Thanksgiving coming up, which is a colonial holiday. And they actually, this Thanksgiving that's being celebrated is a celebration that has been colonized, because there were annual harvest festivals that the Native Americans were celebrating before there were even a colonizer, before a colonizer stepped foot in the Americas. And so if you know the history, of course, the colonizers get involved in the celebration. But when we look at the history and see where the Native Americans are, we have a celebration that's taking place without Native American involvement. That's the true example of colonization, right? Ethnic cleansing. That's an example of ethnic cleansing. So it's a serious contradiction to celebrate the holiday of Thanksgiving. I will not tell people not to get with their family this weekend and do your thing. But if we can begin to create alternatives, and there are alternatives out there to be celebrated, let's try to do that. Just like with Christmas, the alternative of here, based here in America, the alternative is Kwanzaa, which is also celebrated in places outside of America. But we have to begin to remove ourselves from colonial celebrations, colonial culture. So let me read this. Thanksgiving, it's celebration of love and life, a tribute to all our peoples and ancestors displaced by colonialism and genocide. And this is going to be next week, Friday, November 24th. 2023. Doors open at 6 p.m. Nicholas, Brooklyn. So if you're in Brooklyn, if you're in New York or in the area, do your best to make your way there. Nicholas, Brooklyn is also, a powerful institution within itself. Nicholas, Brooklyn been holding it down for years. You can go to Nicholas, Brooklyn and get some African garments, oils. They sell books, different types of jewelry, African jewelry, and other accessories. So definitely check out Nicholas, Brooklyn, even outside of going to the Thanksgiving event. So, and there's several organizations that are are sponsoring this event: Watoto Entertainment, DTR 360, NPDM, Holla, all of these great organizations too that I'm tapped in with, and some others. So I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but definitely be there. Be there, be square. Yeah, I'm old school. I'm sorry. Be there, be square. So yeah, let's get into this, man. So today I'm going to be talking about these corporations that operate in Sudan, particularly Tradive. And let me pull that up right here. All right. So Tradive General Trading LLC. And so back in June, there were sanctions that was placed on Tradive because of and Tradive and 3 other corporations who were fueling the conflict in Sudan, funding both sides, sponsoring both sides of this conflict between the government and the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. And so there were sanctions that were placed on it by the United States, and I think UK later also placed sanctions on these corporations. There's some serious, I think the sanctions on these corporations, like on the surface, it's a good move, right? It's a way to try to curb the behavior of these corporations and the funding that's going into the atrocities that's taking place. But when you dig deeper, at least when I dig deeper, I see some other nefarious acts when it comes to the United States and the UK, and ulterior motives that these states have. People where there's licenses, and I'll get into the story, but there's licenses that are given to nonprofit corporations, right, non-governmental organizations that are able to go into Sudan now and provide resources to the people in Sudan. But these people, when you look at it, these institutions, right, they need resources to be able to operate and to provide food and water to the people in Sudan. So it's another way to offer contract and put money into these nonprofit into the nonprofit industrial complex, right? And when we dig deeper, let's find out like who's behind these these nonprofit organizations. I won't get into who's behind and who those nonprofit organizations are today, but when we dig deeper into it, we'll see that other people are able to benefit, and usually, the West is able to benefit from the sanctions. Somebody is going to make a whole lot of money as a result of these sanctions placed on these corporations. And it's not that I'm, sympathizing with these corporations either, but it's just a contradiction. It's the nature of capitalism itself. It doesn't solve the problem. That's the point I'm making. So I tend to go on, but let me share my screen and get right into the story. But before we get into the corporation, I just want to first start off with just acknowledging what's happening in Sudan. Share my screen. All right, UN sounds the alarm on Darfur. Warns world not to repeat history. At least 800 people were killed within 72 hours this week as a part of the ethnic cleansing of minorities conducted by the RSF and its allies in West Darfur. And why does it just say ethnic cleansing? Why doesn't it say it's a part of the genocide that's taking place? This is genocide. Ethnic cleansing is a product, right? A byproduct of genocide. Well, they go hand in hand. Ethnic cleansing itself is genocide. It's an element of genocide, right? So why not say genocide? Genocide and ethnic cleansing. Not to say this, maybe in the story to get into it. But before that, let me stop sharing just for a second, because I'm beginning to wonder if the world forgot what genocide is, and how genocide is defined. So let me pull that up really quick and make sure that we are all on the same page when it comes to what genocide is. Right. So the definition of genocide: Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, Article 2. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group, right? And so it gets into the elements of crime. But I want to go down here to the part 1 and 2. Again, the popular understanding of what constitutes genocide tends to be broader than the content of the norm under international law. Article 2 of the Genocide Convention contains a narrow definition of the crime of genocide, which includes two main elements, a mental element, the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, and a physical element, which includes the following 5 acts enumerated exhaustively: killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. All right. And so I want to pull up ethnic cleansing. The UN hasn't provided a definition for ethnic cleansing yet. But the element of ethnic cleansing is found in genocide, in the definition of genocide. But I just want to pull up a definition of ethnic cleansing. So ethnic cleansing, the attempt to create ethnically homogeneous geographical areas through the deportation or forcible displacement of persons belonging to particular ethnic groups. Ethnic cleansing sometimes involves the removal of all physical vestiges of the targeted group through the destruction of monuments, cemeteries, and houses of worship. All right. And so, when we look at what's taking place in Sudan, even Congo, we just covered what's happening in the Congo, and how 6.9 million people are displaced. That's ethnic cleansing right there. So I'm going to go back to this story, but I think it's important that we have a clear understanding of these definitions and understand that there's a history too. We go back, though these are new concepts. The actions itself is old as colonialism and imperialism. The actions of the act of genocide and ethnic cleansing, African people know all too well, right? The Mayafa, which is our Holocaust, right? The terrible occurrence that African people has gone through and continue to go through. We still live in the Mayafa, right? And that is a history of ethnic cleansing and genocide. Let me see. Sanctions are just blindfolds on us. Yeah, for sure. The U.S. is. I wish I had somebody. I can't multitask too much. But definitely, speaking of the world forgetting genocide. Just pull it out. I'm just reading the chat. Speaking of the world forgetting genocide, I was listening to Professor Jeremiah Pierre today, and she said we cannot villainize Hitler and not villainize Leopold, and to do so is to align with racism. How about, and we cannot, villainize them and not villainize Winston Churchill, or that we cannot villainize, people like Woodrow Wilson, and any other of these colonial representatives, right? And we just heard, like these are people, they had colonial. Theodore Roosevelt, for example, was a president. And Theodore Roosevelt is on record of saying that, I'm not saying that every good Indian is a dead Indian, but 9 out of 10 are, right? He's on record. And there's statues of this person who said that genocide was a necessity. It was necessary for the European to take this land, right? So this is the mindset of these colonizers. So, but let me get into this story really quick. And again, appreciate everybody for tapping in. Y'all gonna have me going in now. I feed off. Fred Hampton, Chairman Fred used to say, I get high off the people. So don't get me too hyped, y'all. All right. So let me go to this story really quick. Let me finish reading this. So escalating bloodshed. And this story, this came out November 11th. So this is fresh. This is by Giselle Ewing. Escalating bloodshed since the outbreak of civil war in Sudan could lead to another genocide. Let me scroll back up for a second. At least 800 people were killed within 72 hours. Okay. We haven't gotten to genocide yet. All right. Maybe I'm learning something. Put it in the chat. Maybe I'm missing something. Escalating bloodshed since the outbreak of civil war in Sudan could lead to another genocide, the United Nations warned after a sharp uptick of violence in Darfur. This is why we have to define. This is why We Charge Colonialism is important, and all of the other platforms like Black Power Media, right? Kuba Kenny, Sister Nduku, who's tapped in. We're going to call it for what it is, right? The West is going to take its time and wait till after the genocide has taken place. We're going to call it for what it is. It's a genocide taking place, and it needs to be stopped right now. The UN Refugee Agency said on Friday that it was gravely concerned following the mass killings of at least 800 people within 72 hours as part of the ethnic cleansing of minorities conducted by the Arab paramilitary Rapid Support Forces and its allies in the Ardamada refugee camp in West Darfur this week. Reports from Ardamada detail how paramilitary forces armed with assault rifles went door to door shooting men and boys, leaving their corpses scattered on the street. About 30,000 non-Arab Sudanese civilians, 30,000, y'all, 30,000, largely members of the Masalit tribe, had sought shelter in the Ardamada camp since mid-April when war broke out between Sudan's two top generals, Sudanese military General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and RSF General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. Remember that name, y'all. Remember this name right here, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. The U.S. Embassy in Khartoum attributed the mass killings to the RSF, further expressing concern about the RSF's pattern of abuses in connection with their military offenses. We are deeply disturbed by eyewitnesses' reports of serious human rights abuses by the RSF and affiliated militias, including killings in Ardamada, West Darfur, ethnic targeting of the Masala community leaders and members, and the arbitrary detentions of civilians, including human rights defenders and activists. The embassy, as a matter of fact, I'm not sure if I covered, but there was a women's rights activist who was killed in Sudan, in Darfur, not too long ago. I think I did cover it, but the embassy official account posted to X, formerly known as Twitter, on Wednesday. These horrifying actions once again highlight the RSF's pattern of abuses in connection with their military offenses. UN High Commissioner Filippo Grandi on Friday compared the current violence to the U.S. recognized genocide in Darfur, in which an estimated 300,000 people died between 2003 and 2005, warning that a similar dynamic might be developing. Right. So after that genocide had taken place, how did the world not institute Africa? How did Africa? Well, we know the contradictions that Africa are dealing with. And so we don't have the right leadership to do what was necessary, which was put in the proper structure to prevent something like this from happening again. The people who committed the genocide still maintain the power to commit another genocide, which is happening right now. And these are forces that are divided among themselves. The people who were aligned in the first genocide are fighting among themselves. But even within the eternal conflict that's taking place, they're finding time to commit genocide and ethnic cleansing of the non-Arab population. So 20 years ago, the world was shocked by the terrible atrocities and human rights violations in Darfur. We fear a similar dynamic might be developing. So I'm going to scroll down a bit. Well, I guess the story's almost over. But I'm going to scroll down. Just some more than 4.8 million people have been displaced internally in Sudan, and 1.2 million have fled to neighboring countries since April. According to the UN, at least 8,000 people fled to Sudan to Chad last week alone. So I want to just because, like, it's even shocking, just reading it, man, it's hitting home. So I want to read it again because the numbers itself, I think, we have to just picture that many people, understand that many people. I'm in a city with a population that's not even half of that, right? So it's like the whole city of Philadelphia just picking up and just having to leave. Brooklyn, I think Brooklyn's population might be, it may be around half of that, but just think if you're, in these places, and I know a lot of people who reside in these places, just imagine having to pick up everybody in the city and vacate the city. Like, this is ethnic cleansing. More than 4.8 million people have been displaced internally in Sudan, and 1.2 million have had to flee the country. So stop sharing this, right? And I ask you guys to remember that name, Muhammad Dagalo. Sorry, I'm going to pull him up. He's actually one of the founders or owners of or partners of one of these corporations that I'm going to be discussing. And so before I pull up these corporations, there was a movie that came out in 1976 called Network. And there's a part in that film that I want to show. It's about 5 minutes long. But I think it gives us a understanding, and most of us probably, conscious of this, but, people will tap in and may not understand how colonial capitalism operates. And so we sometimes get caught up in nation states and not understanding the corporations, right? The power of the corporation to even influence the nation state. And a lot of these people could care less about nationality, right? The masses of people, we sort of get, the oppressed, the colonized sort of get caught up into these colonial borders. And we'll say, hey, I'm American, I'm Jamaican, or I'm, Sudanese, or I'm, Congolese, right? We get caught up into these borders, which is colonial constructs at the end of the day when we look at it, because it didn't exist prior to colonialism, right? And so we become so nationalistic if someone isn't of our nationality or of our ethnic group, we look at them as an outsider. And we, tend to dehumanize these people in a way where we don't care. A lot of people in the diaspora, let me not say a lot of people, but I'm having conversations with people who don't even see the connection of what's happening in Sudan and Congo with them, as African people in the diaspora, right? And so that's what colonial borders tend to do. But I want to pull this up. This is from the Network, and if you haven't seen the film, it's pretty good film as well. And this guy, Mr. Bill, who goes on television, right, and he's sensationalizing what's happening around the world, and actually the corporation is using him to make the network a lot of money. But he made one vital mistake when he took his anger, the anger that he was directing at people and just the contradictions that people were having, the things that we were doing, how we were dressing and how we were just being manipulated and controlled. But when he attacked the corporations, that's when he was pulled into the office. And this is the scene that I'm at right now, where they're giving him this spill about what he just did. Go ahead. And I see y'all in the chat. I'm gonna come right back to y'all.
They say I can sell anything. I'd like to try to sell something to you. Valhalla, Mr. Beale. Please sit down. You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it. Is that clear? You think you merely stopped a business deal? That is not the case. The Arabs have taken billions of dollars out of this country, and now they must put it back. It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity. It is ecological balance. You are an old man who thinks in terms of nations and peoples. There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, rands, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet. That is the natural order of things today. That is the atomic and subatomic and galactic structure of things today. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale? You get up on your little 21-inch screen and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today. What do you think the Russians talk about in their councils of state? Karl Marx? They get out their linear programming charts, statistical decision theories, Minimax solutions, and compute the price-cost probabilities of their transactions and investments, just like we do. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business, Mr. Beale. It has been since man crawled out of the slime. And our children will live, Mr. Beale, to see that perfect world in which there's no war or famine, oppression or brutality. One vast and ecumenical holding company for whom all men will work to serve a common profit, in which all men will hold a share of stock, all necessities provided, all anxieties tranquilized, all boredom amused. And I have chosen you, Mr. Beale, to preach this evangel.
Why me?
Because you're on television, dummy.
Yep, because you're on television, dummy. People gonna listen to you, right? So yeah, I wanted to get, because this is particular mindset that I wanted to like really expose when we have to understand who we're dealing with. I mean, even the point that he said that since man has existed, that the world has been a business. That's the mindset. I could not disagree more. But if this is the framework that you're working from, right, you're going to interact with humanity in a particular way. I'm coming up with a new science. I'm doing some science, right? I'm doing it might be pseudoscience right now, but I'm going to put some science together a mathematical equation, profit over people. I'm going to see if I'm going to do some research and see if there's a connection. Profit over people equals genocide, right? I'm going to do this mathematical equation. I'm going to do some research, and I'm going to see if there's a relationship. I think that there is a relationship, but can it be broken down to a mathematical equation? We'll see. But with that being said, I want to go into the corporation. Appreciate everybody for tapping in. Back in June, the United States put out a press release sanctioning these 4 corporations that are operating in Sudan that is fueling both sides of the war. Let me pull this up. I think this is it right here. So this was back in June. So Treasury sanctions military affiliated companies fueling both sides of the conflict in Sudan. And again, going back to that video, and when we're talking about corporations, this corporation in particular that I'm talking about, Tradive, is based in the United Arab Emirates, Dubai to be exact, in Dubai, right? And so again, this goes with, you have a corporation that's not even based in Sudan that's fueling a war in Sudan, right? Or helping to fuel a war that fuel a genocide in Sudan because of economic interests. Doesn't matter about the people, nationality. These are people who connected along religious lines and ethnic lines, right? But it is business that is building this relationship between these two people. And I remember I was covering Sudan, and I talked about the United Arab Emirates and how they were funding or had some they were funding this war in Sudan. And there was a question. I remember somebody was I can't remember who asked the question, but somebody was asking what was the United Arab Emirates interest in Sudan. And I knew it was an economic interest, but I didn't know the specifics. So I'm glad through my research I was able to come across this, because this is showing a direct and specific interest that the United Arab Emirates has in Sudan. They have a multinational corporation is operating in Sudan that's making millions of dollars. One of these corporations that I'm going to highlight made $2 billion in operations in Sudan. $2 billion, right? These aren't poor nations, man. You know, we talk about the poverty in Africa, you know, but how are these companies able to make billions of dollars in Africa if it's so poor? So Treasury sanctions military affiliated companies fueling both sides of the conflict in Sudan. Today, the U.S. Department of the Treasury Office Foreign Assets Control designated 4 companies generating revenue from and contributing to the conflict in Sudan. The entities designated today are affiliated with the 2 embattled forces that are fueling the ongoing conflict in Sudan. 2 companies affiliated with the paramilitary rapid support forces. And I always, anytime I talk about the rapid support forces, I always have to make sure that I uplift or emphasize that they are the Janjaweed. Like, the rapid support forces are made up of the Janjaweed, and the Janjaweed were the militia, the militia that was used by the government to commit the genocide of the Sudanese people between 2003 and 2005. That's who the rapid support forces are. And 2 companies affiliated with the Sudanese Armed Forces. And the Sudanese Armed Forces, they're not without reproach either, because it was the government who was sanctioning this genocide that took place. So, both of these actors that are involved in this, again, we have to look at these groups, the government itself, and the power that they have. And when we talk about the future, these are people who institutions that need to be dismantled. power need to be stripped from them, or they need to be isolated in some form, because they have shown that they don't want to be a part of the African family. Through sanctions, we are cutting off key financial flows to both the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese Armed Forces, depriving them of resources needed to pay soldiers, rearm, resupply, and wage war in Sudan, said Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen. The United States stands on the side of civilians against those who perpetuate violence towards the people of Sudan. The United States stands on the side of civilians, right? And I know they're talking about the people of Sudan, but, you know, I mean, history has shown that they don't stand. They stand on the side of big business. They stand on the side of people that they are allied with, even if those people are. Because if they had an issue with, so why are we sending resources to Israel, who is committing genocide, right? So it's a contradiction. You know, it's an inconsistency on the part of the United States. Right? How many dictators throughout Africa that the United States had put into power and supported after they were put into power, who were committing atrocities against the people, right? Mobutu comes to mind. So these are some of those corporations right here. Al Junaid, multi-activities company, limited company. Al Junaid multi-activities company is a Sudanese holding company controlled by the RSF commander Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. Hold on. Isn't this the guy I was just talking about? I said, remember that name. Remember that name. And his brother, RSF Deputy Commander Abdul Rahim Dagalo, based in Khartoum. Al Junaid operates 11 subsidiaries across multiple economic sectors, including the gold mining industry. Since the RSF's expropriation of the Jebel Amir gold mine in 2017, gold mining export has become a vital source of revenue for the Dagalo family and the RSF. Are y'all hearing me right now? Come on, listen to the contradiction right here. This is what I'm talking about. All right, so you have this corporation, you have the RSF support forces. They are fighting the government for control of the government, right? So you have these people who are committing genocide, who's controlling the economy of not the entire economy, but they have a tremendous amount of control over vital resources. We look at these corporations; they are controlling 80% of the economic sector in Sudan. 80%. So they have a vital interest. When we look at this struggle, this is a struggle over control over Africa's resources and land. There's no when it comes to the ethnic cleansing, this isn't just an outcome of an eternal conflict, and these people, non-Arab people, just happen to be in the way. Right, these indigenous African people, well, they are in the way, but it just happened to be in the middle of the conflict. No, there's vested interest in the resources and the land. And so these Africans who are occupying this space, right, they need to go. Ethnic cleansing needs to take place so that these institutions, or these forces can have control over more African lands. So OFAC or OFAC designated Al Junaid multi-activities company pursuant to executive order for being executive order 140098 for being responsible for or complicit in or having directly or indirectly engaged or attempted to engage in actions or policies that threaten the peace, security, or stability of Sudan. Right. And Tradive General Trading LLC. This is I actually was doing some research on this particular company, and as I was looking at Tradive, I came across these other corporations. So I thought, hey, let's talk about all of them. But Tradive General Trading LLC is a front company controlled by RSF Major Algoni Hamdan Dagalo, right? And it doesn't talk about, at least here, They don't make the connection between Al-Ghani and Muhammad, right? But they're both the Gallos, and I'm going to make the assumption that they're part of the same family, that they are part of the same family, right? I wouldn't be reaching if I was to say that, right? So based in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, right? Again, going back to what's the UAE's interest in Sudan? And the UAE has interest throughout Africa. Uh, we covered this on this channel. It's been a long time, but we talked about how the largest multinational corporations operating in Africa, most of those companies are based in Dubai. You have more of them the headquarters of these companies based in Dubai than you have throughout Africa, right? So when we talk about the interest, but in particular Sudan, we can see the connection as the Gallo has a company. He's partnered with the UAE. Tradive General Trading LLC is a procurement company that has purchased vehicles for the RSF in the past. Some of these vehicles may have been retrofitted with machine guns for the RSF to use to patrol the streets of Khartoum and elsewhere in Sudan. Tradive General Trading LLC was designated pursuant to EO 14098 for being responsible for or complicit in or having directly or indirectly engaged or attempted to engage in actions or policies that threaten the peace, security, or stability of Sudan. Make sure y'all able to see. Okay, I just want to make sure y'all seeing what I'm seeing. I'm gonna come back to this. I wanna show you the actual document, their license. Pull up their license real quick. If you go into this issuing date 2018, want to scroll down to their partners, you can see right here nationality. Look at nationality on here: United Arab Emirates, right? Sudan. With the nationality of the shareholders or license partners, right? So United Arab Emirates, Isa Mohammed Rashid Saif Al Mari, right? So the UAE has it's because they're making a bunch of money over there in Sudan. And the partner, as I just mentioned, Sudan National, Algoni, Habnan Daglo Musa. But you have, going back to nationality, you have a Sudanese national who has this company, but is working in the interest of a national of the UAE. And so this Sudanese national is committing genocide and atrocities against other Sudanese, other people of the same nationality. We seek nationality, don't get caught up in nationality, right? We in the United States, we know fairly well you could be of the same nation and how another person of the same nationality, right, will oppress and exploit you, right? Decades, centuries of that, right? Even with citizenship, a person of the same citizenship, they passed a constitutional law that said Black people were citizens and still was having their rights abridged by people who were supposed to be of the same nationality, right? This is what's taking place. Scroll down here. I think on here it says where the headquarters, you can see Dubai Economy, Government of Dubai, right? Or the receipt they paid to have their company based over in Dubai. Even has the amount of money, which was in dirhams, right? They paid over 32,000 in dirhams, right? That's a UAE currency, and it's used in Morocco as well. I could be wrong, but I don't even think the Sudanese currency is dirham. Somebody can check that, but I know Morocco and the UAE uses that currency. So let me go back to the sanctions, because there's something else I want to uplift as far as the subsidiaries. We talk about subsidiaries. Because because these companies are in other sectors, and sometimes they serve as fronts to other companies and corporations that are operating within the economy. And one of these other, let me pull this up, U.S. corporations that I'm going to discuss is supposed to be a defense, right? They operate in weapons, but they have subsidiaries. And so this might be my next research project right here, to find out who these subsidiaries are, right? And I would be no more if I was to find an American, company over there. But anyway, defense industry systems. Defense industry systems is another one. This is a large company, and they are supporting the first two companies are funding the RSF. This company in particular is funding the Sudanese armed forces. So defense industry system is Sudan's largest defense enterprise, generating an estimated $2 billion in revenue via hundreds of subsidiaries across various sectors of the Sudan economy. Like, man, it's so convoluted. You can't even find out the company. You don't even know if the company is a subsidiary of the defense industry system, right? Because this is how colonial capitalism works. This is how capitalism works, right? Where you can open up these fronts. You create one corporation, then you create another one under it, and then the one that's under that has corporations under it or companies under it, and you have all of them. You have to really do the research to find the connections. A lot of these corporations in America that's operating at one time had made resources or making their capital off of slavery. And what happens is sometimes they change the name, or they sell it to another company, but it's the same people operating the company, right? Or they're given a position in another company. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole right now. But this is capitalism. This is how the ruling class retains its power over the masses of people. They maintain their position of power. So you have, defense industry system manufactures a range of small arms, conventional weapons, ammunition, and military vehicles for the SAF, and uses a complex system to hide its ownership. I just said that, right? I'm going to just read. I don't even need to talk. And uses a complex system to hide its ownership of these subsidiaries and to obtain favorable letters of credit from the Sudan Central Bank. Defense industry systems not only defaults on the loans obtained under these letters of credit, but also uses these favorable funds guarantees to compete unfairly with civilian businesses that do not enjoy such favorable financial terms. Right, and I just want to stop there. Corporations, this is capitalism. The multinational corporations and corporations in general, how they are able to wipe out the companies, right? The small companies and businesses, because of the power and resources that they have. This is what we see, the huge companies like Amazon and Walmart, how they can hurt local businesses, Chiquita Bananas, right? So this has, the corporations have a history of doing this. And what capitalism does, colonial capitalism does, it transforms the local economy. So you either have to change your economy or change your business or your industry, or the way that you operate your business to align with the new structure, new economy that's being imposed on you, or you're going to be completely wiped out, right? And this is what happens, whether it's by force or just you not being able to compete, which is still force at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's, they physically removing you or forcing you through their economic power, it's still force all the same. So this is what's happening with the Sudanese people, local Sudanese people, unable to compete with these large industries. And so OFAC designated defense industry systems pursuant to EO 14098 for being responsible for, complicit in, or having directly or indirectly engaged or attempted to engage in actions or policies that threaten the peace, security, or stability of Sudan. All right, so I'm gonna wind down a bit. This is the last one. Sudan Master Technology, an arms company, is a shareholder in the multi-defense industry system, right, which is what we just talked about. Is a shareholder in multiple defense industry system companies and a major shareholder in 3 companies involved producing weapons and vehicles for the SAF. All right, OFAC designated Sudan Master Technology pursuant to EO 14098 for being responsible for or complicit in or having directly or indirectly engaged or attempted to engage in actions or policies that threaten the peace, security, or stability of Sudan. And so, again, I spoke about this earlier of how the general licenses, right, licenses that were issued or to be issued to non-governmental agencies. I think 3 licenses have already been issued, and I don't think they named those companies here, but let me read this. These GLs authorize certain activities of international organizations and non-governmental organizations and certain transactions relating to the provisions of water, food, and agricultural and medical items to Sudan, right? And whoever those companies are, they're going to make a lot of money, right? With millions of people. So, I mean, if America really cared, which they don't, they will be trying to end this conflict, right? Directly trying to end this conflict, but they don't have any interest in ending this conflict, right? But there's some companies, but they're willing to let some companies make a whole lot of money off of the misery of these people. What do we say? 4.8 million people have been displaced as a result. This is Sudan. How about we add this to the 6.9 million in Congo? That's over 10 million people. 10 million people, and that's larger than a lot of countries. That's larger than a lot of countries. And so the last thing I want to just touch on, it's in alignment with this. It was a report that was put out about the sanctioning that's happening. About a strategy for ending the conflict, which is the sanctions. And anybody who been around and seen how sanctions work, or should I say don't work, right? Wasn't Iraq sanctioned? Wasn't Iran sanctioned? Like what did they do to change what was happening in Iraq, if anything? And they talk about how, these sanctions aren't to hurt the people or punish the people. It's to change behavior. What behavior is being changed? If anything, the people, if the people who are in power, they're going to be able to get resources regardless. If anything, it'll have them come down even harder on the oppressed and exploited, right? So this is BS at the end of the day as far as the strategy. But if they really care, and I don't want I want a strong Africa to be able to solve this problem. But I just think that any type of involvement from the U.S. Is disingenuous, and it's only going to worsen the conflict. And the ulterior motive for me that I think, and this is my just going by history, is that they want to weaken the government so that they can come in, right, and have more control and say over African lives. Because a weak government, then what happens is with weak governments, they become vulnerable and they have to look for alliances with militarily stronger nations. In the West, one thing the West has a monopoly on is force right now when it comes to nuclear weapons and armory, right? And so, that's what I look at. I look at the ulterior motive of the West, because if they really cared about the people, why aren't they sending support, and I'm talking about the support to be able to defend themselves from genocide and so forth, right? Why, if you're talking about an ethnic cleansing and a genocide is taking place, and the United Nations, right, have already put out a definition for it, and we're talking about this. These are international crimes that are being committed. Then why isn't there force? I mean, they invaded Kuwait. I mean, they invaded Iraq when Iraq went into Kuwait in the 90s. The whole world was involved in that. The whole world came together and went against Iraq because Iraq went into Kuwait. A small Kuwait. I don't even know what the population is there. Population of Kuwait is, but let me pull this last thing up. And I just want to go, I'm not going to go into the whole report, but just the first few paragraphs of this report. This was put out, as you can see, May 2023, to stop the war in Sudan, bankrupt the warlords, right? And this is why think tanks are important. So this was put out by Netherlands Institute of International Relations, and Dr. Amerson Wilson talks about the importance of think tanks. And we have to begin to develop. We charge colonialism. That has to be, part of our New Year's agenda, is to, restructure, I think, into a think tank. We were there before, but we was dealing with some contradictions. But I think we want to, get back to that and put out more reports and more of these stories, so that we can present what's happening from an African-centered perspective, because a lot of these think tanks that are coming, this one particularly in the Netherlands, and not to say that there wasn't any African involvement in the writing of this, but a lot of these think tanks that are putting out reports are putting it out from the lens of the colonizer. Sad to say, they become apologists for the colonizer, right? And the solutions are never to dismantle the colonial system. For most of these large think tanks, that well-funded think tanks, and well-funded right there tells you, the interest, or what type of stories these think tanks are going to put out, or what type of influence, I should say, that they're going to have. This publication is part of a research initiative led by Sudanese researchers and data analysts in Sudan and abroad. Since the 15th of April 2023, a conflict between Sudan's two largest armed actors, the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces, has ravaged the country. 45 million civilians stand in the crossfire. Their lives threatened by war. Hundreds of thousands of people are fleeing the country. Sudan's international partners have both a moral duty and a practical interest in promoting peace in the country. Just quickly on the timeline too. So this report was put out in May. The beginning of the conflict was April 15th was the start of this conflict in Sudan. So a month or less than a month later, this report is put out. The sanctions was initiated on June 1st, which was a month or less than a month after this report was put out. Right. So they're moving pretty fast. But here we are in November, and we're talking about genocide and ethnic cleansing. Right. Here we are. So what has this solved? War is an expensive business. Large sums of money are required to pay for soldiers, weapons, and all kinds of supplies that are needed both before the start of a conflict and throughout its duration. Over the last decades, the SAF and the RSF have built strong economic power through their control over vast business enterprises made up of hundreds of companies managed without any form of public accountability towards the Sudanese population. The resources amassed through these business empires have been used to build up the military strength that the two forces are now unleashing against each other and against Sudan's population. All right, so I'm going to stop there because we went an hour. I was trying to keep this to an hour, but keep in mind I'm going to keep on covering what's taking place in Sudan. So this isn't the end of the conversation. So I just want to, want you guys to know that. And this isn't the first time. So just keep tapping in. If this is your first time here, subscribe. And we won't just be talking about Sudan. because when you go throughout Africa, the same type of contradictions exist in each one of the African nations. We can talk about Chad. We can talk about Central Africa Republic, what's taking place there. We could talk about Equatorial Guinea or Guinea-Bissau. Everywhere you go, you're going to find from Sierra Leone, right? And so when we see what happened in the Sahel, excuse me, with Burkina Faso and Niger, and we see these coup d'etats take place, or the overthrow of the old regime. It shouldn't be of no surprise, because they were dealing with the same type of contradictions, right? And it has to be end of the old and ushering forth of the new. Yeah, Equatorial Guinea, like, I've been waiting to do a story on that. It's been long overdue, Brother Langston, because that's a serious contradiction there. And this goes back to the inconsistency or the hypocrisy of the West, if y'all really cared. And the reason I say the West, I'm pointing out the contradiction because I want us to understand that the West isn't going to solve our problem, and they need to just leave. Like, they need to go. And Africa needs to be stronger at coming together to solve these problems. Because if anything, the West is going to exacerbate the issues that are going on over there. And when you look through it, the West is making is able to secure wealth at the expense of these conflicts and the exploitation that's taking place throughout the continent. So I think that's it. I think it was one more point I wanted to make. No, we're gonna leave it there, man. Appreciate everybody for tapping in. If you miss a portion of this, go back, check out the replay, subscribe to the channel. This is your first time here, and let's continue to get organized, because the answer isn't just being conscious of the problem. That's a start. Being conscious and knowledgeable of what's taking place is just a start. But it's what we do, the actions that we take after we get the information. Let's go into our communities, get on the ground, let's organize the people, because right where you are, locally, wherever you are, whether you're on the continent or in the diaspora, you can organize the people locally to take back power, because we all are victims of colonial capitalism at the end of the day. So with that being said, till next time, peace, everybody.